Don't touch that dial. You're tuned in to the Dread Podcast Network.
Welcome to Development Hell. For every horror movie that hits V.O.D, countless others end up D.O.A. Development Hell is the podcast dedicated to unearthing these cursed horror productions. We're going to find out what went wrong, and then decide if these titles still stand a shot at the green light. I am your host, Josh Corngut. I am the managing editor of Dread Central. I am also a filmmaker in Toronto, Canada. This podcast is a proud member of the Dread Podcast Network. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Development Hell. Today is our second follow-up sequel parter to our coverage of Fantasia Film Festival 2024. We are, as I promised, still joined by some of Dread Central's finest. Last week we had staff writer Chad Collins, and today we are joined by editor-in-chief Mary Beth McAndrews. Shut up! She is not only my boss, she is a movie director, she is a podcaster, she is a chaotic bisexual, and she has been on this podcast multiple times, previously talking about Hellboy, Nosferatu, and Behind the Mask. Mary Beth, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm so glad to be here.
Tell me a little more about you, please. Yeah, do it.
So yeah, editor-in-chief of Dread Central, that's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
I directed a movie that's coming out to festivals this year called Bystanders. That's pretty cool. I have a podcast, and I just like to talk about movies on the internet.
And she does do that. So we're talking about Fantasia.
Yeah.
It's a film festival. I asked Chad this. I'm going to ask it to you too. What is Fantasia? How is it unique? Like, what's the deal with this festival? I'm so Jerry Seinfeld.
I'm so Jerry Seinfeld. I love this festival. This is one of the first festivals I ever got to cover virtually. Because it was, I can't even remember what outlet it was for, but they were always really accepting and they always had such a weird program. They're a genre festival, but they also focus a lot on Asian cinema and genre cinema, and it's just such a really cool festival that I've had such a soft spot in my heart for a long time, and I finally got to go a couple of years ago for the first time in person in Montreal, and it's just like, it's such a big festival, but also such a small festival at the same time. Yeah. Like, there's only 2 theaters that have for the movies, and it just feels very small and tight knit, but also there's like movies from all over the world, and it's just like a really cool experience. Yeah.
What are some like historic touchstones or like important movies that you first got to experience through Fantasia?
So Skinamarink was definitely one of them. I know that you watched it before me. I'm admitting this on air. You watched it before me. Did you?
No.
One of us watched it.
Okay, I said this on the last episode, but yeah, I didn't get any of the picks I wanted because I submitted my list too late, and so I had to settle on this weird Canadian micro budget movie called Skinamarink, and so I pick it, and you were like, "Oh, what's that?" And then you actually watched it before me, and slowly started to become very, very obsessed, and then I watched it, and I actually reviewed it, and I never became obsessed, but also kind of obsessed. So
yes. So that was a huge one for me. Megalomaniac was a big one also from a couple of years ago. That wild extreme horror movie. I'm trying to look back at what I've seen. Letterboxd, of course, is broken. I've just seen the weirdest stuff from there, and I like a lot of things that like never came out are gonna like I've ever seen come out again. You know what I mean? It's like a once in a lifetime opportunity a lot of the time with those movies, which is both sad and cool all in the same breath. Of like, I love that we have the opportunity, but also it's a bummer that they don't get the attention
that they deserve. It's also very Canadian, and as very Canadian myself, I just very appreciate that about it. And, I like to, be pretentious and like to believe that the things I get to participate in are like number one in the world. And so I like to believe that Fantasia is like the it girl of genre festivals around the globe. Yeah. Some people say it's Sitges, some people say it's Fantastic. They're wrong. I think it's this one. And thank you, Canada, for letting, having that. I'm so grateful. A movie that really stuck with me from this fest was actually last year when I got to see and review Where the Devil Roams, one of the films from the Addams family, who we're going to talk about really soon again. And it's just one of those movies, I can't necessarily say it's like the greatest thing ever made, but it really like connected with me on a like, a thematic and sort of taste level. It was kind of anachronistic. Yeah. It was like, it kind of like, I hate the term steampunk. Is that the term? I hate that word. But it kind of had that vibe where it feels a little bit like it's from the 1800s and a little bit modern and kind of goth and very Rasputina all at once. And that really gave me what I wanted. I never got to talk about this, but my favorite band is Rasputina. Have we talked about this before?
Yes, briefly.
Did you know who they were? Oh, okay. For anyone that doesn't know, which is crazy because there's been 120 episodes of this podcast, my favorite band of all time is Rasputina. It's like Rasputin the guy, but with an A. And they're just these like weird goth chicks that play the cello and kind of make pop music, and it's all very spooky and dark, and a lot of times there's like history lessons, so it's like where I learned about the Donner Party. There's just a song about them. Anyway, listen to them. They're my absolute favorite, and they really do evoke the vibe of Where the Devil Roams. Do you think that leads us to talking about our first movie? Because I feel like it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number one we're going to talk about today is the movie Hellhole. This had its world premiere at Fantasia, and here's what IMDb describes. So, in the Addams Family's celebration of the classic creature feature, an American-led fracking crew working deep in the Siberian wilderness find themselves at odds with government-assigned environmental advisors. When they get approval to drill, the workers uncover the unimaginable, a dormant, parasitic monster entombed deep in the frozen rock. Now awakened, it tears through the mining facility in search of the perfect host. Does that get to the point, in your opinion?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. What is the overall tone to this one, Mary Beth?
The tone that this one has to me is very much, it's very like kind of pitch black humor, which I think a lot of the Addams has, like a lot of the Addams Family stuff does have, but this one even more so because they have even more people. This is the first film where it hasn't just been them and their kids. They went to Serbia, I believe, to film this.
That's where it takes place.
And they have they have a bigger cast, they have a bigger crew. And so there's a little bit more humor here going on, but also there's a lot of also like really weird body horror at the same time. So there's kind of like, God, just like that.
That's terrifying. For those that don't know, her door just opened on its own. It was a ghost. Yeah, it's zanier than usual. I don't know if campy is the right word. Maybe it is, but it's a little bit more like outrageous, and there is some body horror mixed in with humor. Yeah, I would say this is the biggest movie that the Addams Family has done, although it's still pretty small. It's still like giving indie do it yourself. Yes. You were saying this to me off record that like it'd be really cool to see them really take their time and make something preferably with a little bit more resources, because I just know they have some kind of knockout in them ready to go. And I feel like, this one is on its way there, but it does feel a little bit rough around the edges, a little bit kind of, do it yourself still.
Yeah. And because I think they are very punk, they're very DIY, they're very much make the movies we want to make, whatever. And I definitely respect that and love that ethos. It's just that I think sometimes taking a little bit longer to develop and to get the resources to make something even stronger would be cool to see from them. Because I mean, again, they've really, I was looking back at what I saw at Fantasia in 2019, and The Deeper You Dig was their first movie with their daughter. That was a movie I reviewed. So
cool.
I've loved them for so long, and so I think they've shown what they can do with little resources. So I want them to take time and really develop something, because they're year after 1 year after year after
They're pumping
year.
stuff out. Yeah.
Which, again, admirable, but
and interesting. And unlike other stuff that we're seeing, and that family is just so weird and cool.
I know.
Zelda is, I think, the daughter, and she's a super successful model, just gallivanting around the world and just being iconic. And I think my favorite of the group is Toby Poser, who's, I think, the mom of the matriarch of the group. She's just so fucking cool, and she's so fucking cool in this movie where she does kind of play the manager of this fracking crew, and she's not evil, and she's kind of a hard ass, but she just kind of wants to keep her people protected, and she can't, and she's very confused to what's happening. There are these amazing themes in this movie that I just don't think get explored enough. The idea of a fracking crew sort of literally tapping into hell is the kind of environmental horror I would really like to see more of, but it kind of only takes us halfway there.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why, again, it's one of those things where you see it and you're this could have gone even further if they had maybe a little more time, or again, there's some really interesting gender stuff going on here, but there isn't enough time. Yeah, it's just it's fascinating, but also kind of just skirted around. You know what I mean?
It's very gender. There's lots of interesting gender stuff. This creature that sort of jumps from host to host tends to do so often through the anal orifice, which is very invasive in a specific kind of way, but it only does so with men. So it's lots of men getting stuff crawling up their tush. And so what is that saying? Something interesting. Don't exactly know what off the top of my head. It's weird. A lot of people, I'm surprised to see less people comparing it to John Carpenter's The Thing, because it's very The Thing. There's this group somewhere cold, remote, and then the creature is sort of alien-esque and grotesque and very body horror. I was a little disappointed that it was CGI, and not just CGI, but CGI that's clearly above this movie's pay grade, because it just didn't look so great. When I would prefer to have seen them work with practical effects, although I'm sure that would have taken, twice the amount of time to do. But it just would have worked better.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's hard for me to sometimes understand how it's easier to do CGI, and I guess it must be a timing or a resource, who you have available to help make that practical thing happen. It just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would have clicked a little better, but it was still fun. It was still crazy. I still one of the few movies this year where I popped my mouth and went, "What the fuck?" I actually watched this on a train. I was in my train.
That's right. I forgot that you watched this on the train. I forgot about that.
And not to brag, but I was first class, and there were all these old people around me being "What the fuck is happening to that guy's butt on that guy's computer?"
And you're don't worry about it. It's fine.
It's fine. I'm gay. It's fine.
I'm gay.
I'm gay. Okay, so my conclusion, I guess, is it's fun, it's punk, it's do it yourself. It's so many things that work, but I just, I want more from this team. They're I think one of the most exciting voices in horror right now, and I just think, they deserve more, and I'm excited to see what they do next. And I give this one 3.5 out of 5. Where do you land?
Yeah, I agree. Again, I had a lot of fun watching it. I think you can tell how much they wanted to make a really gory, gross creature feature, again with like a limited budget. And I'm excited to see them go back to their roots a little bit more, though, when it's just the 3 of them, the 4 of them kind of in the woods around their house. But it's cool to see them with more resources, and I want to have them do even more in the future. Whoa, my God. Jesus
That was
Christ.
fucked up. Your cat is a ghost. Ghost cat.
I just like evacuated my body. Oh my
You
God.
did. The cat first.
Oh my
Well,
God.
and
Yeah.
hellhole is your cat's butt. There we go.
Yeah.
That was like a play on the word butt, right? Like hellhole, right? In the movie, like
That's
there
what
was
I
butt stuff
thought,
going
which
on
was
there.
like very weird.
I
I
wanted
need to
more of
watch it
that.
again to like understand like what exactly was going on, or if anyone really knew. Like, there's like something there.
I thought for sure there was, because it kept going in and out of people's butts.
Yeah, and it only goes into dudes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
great because they love it. No. Okay, interesting. So we're going to move on to a movie I didn't check out, but you did. Mary Beth, do you want to talk to us about Steppenwolf?
I do. So this was a movie I was very excited about because it was described as like incredibly bleak and like Mad Max, but from Kazakhstan. And as if you don't know, I love bleak, sad, extreme shit. So I was very excited to see this, and it's from Kazakhstan, and that's not a place where I usually see genre films, so I was very excited to check this one out. And so this is a film that takes place in like a dystopian Kazakhstan where it's essentially Mad Max. It's a big Mad Max, where things are going to shit. This ex-cop is an interrogator for the military as a way to make money. Things kind of break bad, and he ends up pairing up with a woman who is searching for her missing son, and she is essentially nonverbal and only able to talk about her kid. And so it becomes this like weird road movie where the two of them are traveling across a fucked up landscape and just killing people and torturing people to figure out where her kid is.
Cool.
And yeah, it's definitely not for everybody.
Okay.
Definitely is a movie that is weirdly misogynistic, but also not at the same time, in a way that is very fascinating to me. Because, she can only speak, she has a really hard time speaking as the trauma response, and he will slap her, and then she'll laugh and be able to start speaking normally again.
All right.
And it's like, okay. But then the entire movie is just about like violent men, not violent women, and there's not like gratuitous like sexual violence. Did you hear that?
Was that thunder?
That's thunder.
You're dead. You're gone. You're toast. I'm jealous, actually.
A ski.
It's
Spooky. But it's just this really fascinating film that is beautifully shot and so sad and bleak, and also fascinating to see this kind of story through the lens of someone from like a Kazakh director. Because again, that's not a perspective we usually see, but it's a subgenre and a kind of tropey journey we're familiar with. But the way it's done is so beautiful and just so dedicated to showing you a hellscape.
Sure.
Yeah, again, it's not an uplifting film by any stretch of the imagination, obviously, but it's very well done, and it's definitely going to be one of those movies that are on lists of like weird, fucked up international movies you should see.
Sick. Can you tell me like what like a standout nasty moment was in terms of gore or like nastiness?
So, there's just like a lot of really awesome set pieces that involve just one guy and a bunch of guns just gunning down a bunch of people.
I'm glad I missed this one.
It's very man. It's very dude. It is very dude. Yeah, it's hard to tell without spoiling though.
That makes sense.
Problem.
It just I thought because I went to theater school, and I'm pretty sure there's like a famous like theater collective in New York or
Yeah.
Chicago called Steppenwolf, and I
Yep.
kind of thought that's what this was going to be, and I don't think that's true at this point.
No, but it's like there's like a whole thing where it's kind of playing off of like the 1974 movie that's also an adaptation of the book from 1927. So there's like they're playing with that a little bit. I don't know. Yeah.
What do you give this motherfucker out of 5?
I give it I'm gonna give it 4, I think.
Nice.
I think it's just pretty unique. I think it's pretty bleak. I think it's really an interesting kind of look at dystopian narratives, and I think if people like New French Extremity films and that kind of thing, they'll vibe with this.
Cool. Love it. I do. I love it. Okay, so we're moving on to a movie that I'm going to lead us through. It's a Guatemalan dark fantasy by a director named Jairo. Help me out here, man. Jairo Bustamante. I'm just going to make that confident. By filmmaker Jairo Bustamante. Here is how Fantasia describes Rita. 13-year-old Rita finds herself incarcerated in an all-girls protective custody facility after fleeing a horrendously abusive home life to seek freedom in the city. The girls in her overcrowded section tell of a prophecy that a warrior angel will arrive to free them of a life of destitution, incarceration, and enforced prostitution. When she's handed a pair of wings of her own, which all the girls in her quarters wear too, it's up to Rita to work out whether she will fulfill the prophecy, and if so, how far she's prepared to go to let the outside world know what's really going on at the facility. So, I mean, as you can probably just hear from that description, it's like very lush, very fairy tale esque in its fantasy, but it's also really brutal and really dark. Festival kind of describes it as being evocative of Guillermo del Toro's earlier works. And I know that's such an easy way to describe sort of any kind of, Latin film, but it's so true. It has that similar sense of how Pan's Labyrinth so beautifully evoked fantasy as a way to sort of cradle away from the horrors of war. And it's doing that here too, but in a much more pared down, much more handmade sort of way, probably because of the resources. He is a Guatemalan filmmaker. He's made a few movies before, but this is still fairly independent in terms of resources.
Okay.
I didn't realize this when watching the film, that it was really like plainly based on real life incident. So in the film, we have this group of girls at this orphanage, but the orphanage is really more like a prison for children that have nowhere else to go. And like a prison, they're sort of all divided into these different groups, these different gangs almost of girls. And each group has a distinctive costume. So like there's the group of girls that are all kind of like canines and they have muzzles on their face and they're very sort of punk. And then there's these girls that are all kind of like young fairies with like, fairy sort of attire. There's ones that kind of look like bunnies. And the group that we're with the most are the angels. And this is where Rita sort of lands, is with this group of angels. And all of these groups, they're wearing these outfits, but they look handmade. So it looks like someone in a high school production made an angel outfit, which gives the sense that these girls are sort of really crafting, their own worlds. It does lean, though, directly into fantasy. So magical realism happens. We see visions of sort of ghostly girls wrapped up in like blinking Christmas lights. And, it's really fantastical in that way. But it really is based on this incident of this group of girls at an orphanage who were fed up with being mistreated, abused, overcrowded, and rebelled. And I'm assuming did try to escape. It didn't work, and they were all locked in one classroom. And desperate to get out, they set fire to a mattress, assuming that this would, have the authorities actually let them out. But they're wrong. And in real life, 41 of these young women and girls perished in a fire, burned literally to death. And there's still an ongoing investigation and people are not being held accountable yet. So like it's this really fucked up real world thing that he is now sort of interpreting through a bit of like a softer fairy tale to make it a little bit more digestible in that Pan's Labyrinth kind of a way. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But it's, especially with the context, it's pretty much unlike anything I've seen before. It's like I think a very, very important story to be getting out there, these lost. And it's not just this group of girls that died. I think there's like a whole generation of abused and lost girls in Guatemala that he's trying to represent. It's heavy. It's really heavy, and I really hope it gets some attention because
it's coming to Shudder soon.
So yes, that's right. I saw.
So that's good.
I mean,
did you see his film La Llorona?
No, I didn't.
Okay, like he's really good at like that one is also very similar of like magical realism and but addressing like real issues in Guatemala. And it's really good but really sad. So I'm excited for Rita because
more of like a traditional horror film, or was it more like this one which was sort of
Yeah, more like this one where it's like kind of a ghost story but kind of not at the same time. And I think Guatemala's entry for the Academy, like the international, like the
that makes sense. Yeah, what a fucking visionary, what a person to keep track of. Something he mentioned at the world premiere that I thought was enlightening was that he traveled to every province of Guatemala looking for his lead actress. So he auditioned hundreds, if not thousands, of like young women and girls in Guatemala. And what he said is that he actually casted more than half of them as either smaller characters or background characters in this orphanage of young girls. And the real orphanage, I think at one point had like 600 youth in it at one point. So he basically took them all to represent. Yeah. So he really does, I assume, he kind of establish a sense of, girls from Guatemala and, their faces and, them as real people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, you got to see it, Mary Beth.
I know, I really do. I really want to see it. That was the only one they weren't sending links out for. It wasn't playing when I saw it.
Weird. I wonder why. Although Shudder, Shudder's, wide-reaching to an extent, but I don't know if it feels like necessarily the right home, but it's something.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Hellhole, right? Like, okay.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate the range for sure, but it's like sometimes it is like you worry. I sometimes worry is like, is Shudder too niche?
Yeah, it is. It's very, very niche. It'd be really cool to see this one hit Netflix.
Yeah.
Not to say that they're going to get anything from it, but it would reach, a broader audience. Well, I'm bummed out, which leads us to our last film, which is another movie that we both did get to experience. So, Kryptic is the name of the movie. It's directed by Courtney Roy, and it's a sci-fi horror outing. Can I get you to maybe read us the Fantasia description?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you had your outline open, which would have been useful. My gosh.
So, clad in a pink windbreaker and hiking boots, Kay Hall, who is played by Chloe Peary from The Queen's Gambit, joins a group of women on a nature hike to Crypto Peak. This area is known for cryptids, and it's also where the renowned cryptozoologist Barbara Valentine went missing 3 years prior while she was searching for a mysterious creature. When Kay strays from the group and has a disturbingly vicious encounter with the beast, she forgets who she is and becomes obsessed with finding Valentine, who bears an uncanny resemblance to Kay. Fleeing an intruder that night, she heads back to the forest where she meets an array of strangers with, cryptic messages as she searches for the missing scientist and the creature. The deeper Kay goes into the woods, both metaphorically and literally, the more she learns about Barb, and haunted by gooey sexual interludes, the deeper she delves into her psyche and the closer she gets to the truth.
What the fuck? I've seen it, and I'm still a little bit on the what the fuck fence, but
that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
I
That's
can't
fair.
say I didn't enjoy it or that I didn't appreciate it. How does this one land for you?
So I am a cryptid media freak. There's a Mothman poster back here. There's cryptids down here. I love cryptids and I love cryptid movies, but they're usually pretty bad. Like, to be perfectly honest, cryptid movies are usually pretty bad because a lot of the time they're just trying to make it a monster movie. Like, look, it's Bigfoot being scary. The horror element is the monster itself, but what I love about Kryptic is instead of it being about the monster, it's about the concept of high strangeness that can exist around these monsters. And like, in a nutshell, high strangeness is this idea that these cryptids are perhaps not like of this dimension and there's something much more complicated going on in the world. And when you interact with these creatures, reality sort of bends and manipulates. And so I got to interview Roy, and she and I nerded out about the Mothman prophecies, where by John Keel, and I was like, and she was like, "Oh my god, high strangeness," and we nerded out about it because it's so interesting. Like, I don't really know if I fully believe in any of this stuff, like for real, but I also find it like super fascinating and just like interesting on a theoretical level. And so Cryptic does that really well in terms of like everything's fucking weird and strange and like reality doesn't make sense. And I love how Roy plays with that idea of just reality bending and manipulating around an experience, and that is what it means to have an experience with a cryptid. It's a little bit different than what you would expect, but I really love that vision.
Wow. Well, that's not POV that I had before, and learning. High strangeness, like the concept, make a good podcast name. I'm sure someone already has it.
Oh yeah.
Because you get high and then talk about weird stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This movie was so goddamn Canadian every turn. Starting off with just the woods, and it's not just woods, but like the very specific kind of woods that when I see it, I go, oh, that's Canada. Like, I collect that. This is Twilight. So this had that, very much so. In terms of resources, it felt very Canadian. And I don't just mean it felt cheap, because it is fairly indie, but that's not what I mean. I mean, like, Canada has this way of making content just feel weird. And this is one fucking weird movie. At least this one did it on purpose. But there's like this feeling of like Twin Peaks in like every piece of Canadian content, and it's not on purpose. So
it's very funny because it did feel very Twin Peaks. Like, this is just like very like weird cryptid Twin Peaks road movie kind of. Then becomes about sexual assault a little bit.
Yeah, and then it's like kind of like there's a doppelganger vibe. I don't know. But I do know when I posted my review of this on my Facebook, a friend of mine who's a comedian in Toronto said, "Oh my god." And then he tagged his friend who's in it. He's like, "My friend is in this movie." And it's like the scary rapist blowjob guy.
Cool. So that, again, another very Canadian experience to be had.
Yeah, so I'm one degree away from that scary blowjob guy. So
wow.
Yeah. I know. It's crazy. I think that Chloe Peary looks so much like, what's her face? Give me
Rebecca Hall.
Rebecca Hall, which is funny because her character's name is Kay Hall. Don't you agree? This is like very Rebecca Hall energy.
Well, she is really good at doing that like scary dead eye stare of just like a brunette, like a like skinny brunette woman on the verge. Like, she's very good at doing that dead eye stare. It's like very uncanny, and they're both very good at that. So I agree.
I'm waiting for her to have like 5 lines in a Mike Flanagan movie at some point. No, I mean that with love. I love a Mike Flanagan brunette. I should start a podcast about Mike Flanagan brunettes. Did this movie like freak you out, creep you out, spook you out, make you feel icky? Like any of that?
I think it was definitely made me feel icky in a sort of like talking about bodily autonomy. Certainly, I don't think scary in the traditional sense, but I think it's addressing some like very real horrors under the guise of cryptid sci-fi situation.
So interesting when you mentioned that, real cryptid content is more complicated than just a monster in the woods. Because when I watched this, I was like, okay, like, they really just don't show it. Like, they really just have these moments of her in the woods going like, whoa, it's just like kind of like getting dizzy, but you never see it. And I was like, okay, like, give me something. But I don't hear from you that it's like actually not about that. It is more about this interdimensional quality, which this movie picks up on.
Yeah.
Yeah, then maybe it feels even more authentic than I realized.
Yeah. Only cryptid girls get it.
Yeah.
Which is probably not great for your movie, but I got it very good. I was like, I am on the wavelength of this fucking weird ass movie.
Well, isn't she lucky that the editor-in-chief of the second largest horror website got it? Because that didn't have to be the case, so no. Interesting. So I gave this one... Well, it was for a different website, and they had made me do it out of 10. So I gave this one 6 out of 10. So I guess it's a 3 out of 5. That's what.
I believe I gave this. Hold on, I'm looking at. I think I gave it a 3.5.
That's arguable.
I did. I gave it 3.5. I was feeling generous.
What was your summary? What was your summary?
Oh, it was very basic. Kryptic is a monster movie unlike anything you've ever seen.
Yeah, well, that's going to be in the trailer, so cute. Wow. Compared to other years, how did this Fantasia lineup stack up? I thought it was pretty good.
I thought it was okay. I think there was a lot of, okay stuff. I think I didn't have as many standouts as I've had in the past.
Yeah.
I know. But
what was she wearing?
I think it was more consistent, and which I like.
Right.
Like I feel like everything. I didn't see anything that I really disliked.
And for the second time in human history, we got to hang out IRL.
It was so fun.
It was so magical. I keep saying it. We had our before sunrise moment because we had a day, and then I had to get on a train.
It was beautiful, and now I have a beautiful piece of Gubbio pottery on my desk.
So I don't know if the podcast knows, but I spent most of July in Italy. Not just Italy.
Well, yeah.
The hometown of Neill, which is a small town in Italy called Gubbio that I kind of have familial connections to. Take that as you will. And they're known for their weird pottery, and I brought back a piece for Mary Booth. So yeah.
It's so pretty and good.
And haunted, so be careful.
Hell yeah.
Be careful. Well, thank you. Oh, wait, no. Well, if you wanted to be found on the internet, where could you be found? Yeah.
So, unfortunately, you can find me pretty easily on the internet. I'm on Twitter at McAndrews, and I'm on Instagram at mb.McAndrews. Those are the two best places to find me and see all the things I'm doing and shit. And also follow Dread Central. I mean, you pimped this, but yeah.
What? Dread Central? I hear through the grapevine also that a movie you may have directed is having a world premiere. Can we maybe know a little more about that?
Yeah, so I directed a rape revenge film called Bystanders. It is having a world premiere at Horror Hound on Friday the 13th, which is awesome. Friday, September 13th at 8 p.m. at Horror Hound. I will be there doing a Q&A. A lot of the cast and crew will be there, which is really cool. And then it's also playing in Philly at the end of September, if anyone is in Philly and wants to come hang.
Yeah, freaks. Go see this movie. I'm so excited for you. Well, thank you for joining me yet again. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's just so you don't fire me. Now stay where you are. Don't go away. I'm hitting stop. Thank you so much for listening to Development Hell. If you enjoy this podcast, then please do us a major favor of leaving us 5 stars and writing a positive review. It really makes all the difference in the world. We'll see you next week with a brand new episode of Development Hell.
Thank you for listening to the Dread Podcast Network.